when Josh had seen the final product, he approached you and said, "Hey, there's just one thing we need to change, and if you're okay with changing that, we're good to go." And you're like, "Oh no." And then he said,
Got nervous. You get nervous. You're like, oh, great.
do you want to explain what happened with that conversation? And I'm talking today with Garrett Batty. That may be a name that's familiar to some of you. He's a filmmaker. He's behind the titles like Saratov Approach, Freetown, Out of Liberty, and he's got a new film that's coming out this month. It's premiering in Utah this weekend, and then later on this month nationwide. It's called Faith of Angels, and it's a true story about a 10-year-old boy who was lost in a mine and the effort to try and find him. Garrett, thanks so much for taking some time with me to talk about this film and this project.
Thank you, Rhett. Yeah, no, it's been so fun to talk about this story and the film and the project, and I'm grateful to anybody who takes an interest in it.
My understanding is that when this hit the news in 1989, obviously it caught the attention of a lot of people, but it made its way all the way to the President of the United States.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it certainly was. I mean, that type of story is certainly a tense situation, and I think it started small with one or two local reporters getting wind of this missing boy, and then by the end of it, it had garnered this national news, and to the point where Josh Dennis received a letter from President Bush at the time, George H.W. Bush, that said, he wished him well on his recovery, and expressed that his story is evidence that miracles still happen.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I'm curious, you probably were quite young at the time that happened, is my guess. How did this story get brought to your attention as a filmmaker?
Josh's family reached out to me a few years ago with the interest of just to even see if I'd be interested in making his story into a film. And I'm always kind of a little protective about saying that, because it sounds like they were pursuing, this, hey, we want to make a big issue out of this. And I think that wasn't the case. I think that they recognize that their story is very, very inspiring and imbues a lot of hope in whoever hears it. And so their approach was kind of hey, can you tell this story about others that did so much and participated in this miracle? And so yeah, from there he pursued it.
There's an interesting element in this story, because there was a man, I don't know if he was on the other side of the country or a few states away, but this man who wasn't even involved somehow feels compelled to go to Utah and join this search effort, and he has no idea why he feels that way.
Yeah, it immediately caught my attention too.
I was going to ask you, was that the element that motivated you to want to tell this story for the screen?
I think that's what definitely broke it into, like, okay, this is now movie worthy. Where we go, it's an amazing story. Any sort of rescue story. A boy is lost in a mine for 5 days, and by all logic, shouldn't have made it out alive. But when he does come out, he feels these. He recognizes that there were angelic angels being felt and with him. Now that's an element of the story. And then yes, John Skinner is this man that is several states away, up on a trip where he's supposed to be for 3 weeks to write a book and fish and kind of get away, and wakes up in the middle of the night and says, I've got to go to Utah for some reason, and has no idea why, no connection why. Yeah, immediately that was an entry point for me as a storyteller to say, okay, let's connect the dots here and say, what's happening behind the scenes to kind of logistically make this event take place. And then John has a key role in finding Josh. It is an unexplainable miracle.
So yeah, you did work directly with Josh Dennis and a lot of the other people involved.
I sat with Josh in his home and his family and talked to Josh and his sweet wife and his mother. His mother, who experiences this, had lived through it. This is just a parent's worst nightmare. but then resulted in one of her greatest joys. Um, and then on the other side of that, I sat with John Skinner in John Skinner's home, and he showed me, he told me the story from his point of view and his these feelings. Like he felt compelled to just try everything he could to get in this mine and help, and some of the opposition being, the dangers of the mine, or the lack of experience in search and rescue, or the authorities maybe being very protective of not letting just anybody in. And then I sat in the homes of several of the search and rescue people who were there at the moment that Josh, who participated the entire time in Josh's search, and then were there in the moment. And not only was able to visit with them, but we invited them on set. And so, in key moments in the film, these original searchers and family members appear in the movie, and this story has made an impact on them so much that 35 years later, we'll be doing the premiere for the movie, and they'll be there to continue to participate in this story.
Yeah, that's cool. I had heard that Josh makes a cameo in the movie,
Yeah.
the real life.
It's kind of fun when we show it to people that know Josh. They kind of point, but in general, you wouldn't ever know. We don't identify it as Josh, but it is a special moment for him to be seen in the movie.
I was reading a column or something over the weekend. It was kind of, it was a little bit humorous. When Josh had seen the final product, he approached you and said, "Hey, there's just one thing we need to change, and if you're okay with changing that, we're good to go." And you're like, "Oh no!" And then he said,
I'm nervous. You get nervous. You're like, "Oh, great."
Do you want to explain what happened with that conversation?
Script. I didn't mean to steal your story, but
No, go ahead.
Script. You queued it up well, and Josh had read the script, and it's important to me, and I've told them, I said, "Look, I'll never be able to recreate your experience. That is, your experience is special to you, but my goal as a filmmaker is to recreate the emotion that you felt, and so I want him to be on board with it." We came back and said, "Look, the movie's good, the script is good. There is one thing we do need to change." I was very nervous because we took, you have to fill in the blanks, you have to add dialogue, you have to maybe, compress certain characters and things like that. And he said, "There's a scene in the movie that as I'm driving up to the mine, I'm eating Twizzlers. There's a scene in the script, I'm eating Twizzlers. And the truth is that I was eating nibs. So if you could change it to nibs, then we'll be okay." And so sure enough, in the movie, you'll watch and you'll see Josh eating nibs in the movie.
That's funny. But was he serious, or was he a little bit tongue-in-cheek?
Boy, I didn't know Josh well at the time, and at the time I certainly took it as, "Hey, this is his note. We're gonna make this change."
That's funny. So down to the package of nibs that he was eating. That's how true you've tried to remain to the story.
We yes, down to the package of nibs, we did get fresh nibs. But I'll tell you, there's a scene in the movie. Josh, he wears a coat in the mine. This is kind of all he had on, was a coat and pair of jeans. That's his actual coat. His mother has preserved that coat, and we were able to use it in the movie. The suit that is being worn by one of the searchers, where Josh finds, and his name is Gary Christensen, and he's got Gary kind of like sewn onto his suit, his jumpsuit. That's the actual jumpsuit. The helmets. Josh shares a story in the movie. Our child actor shares a story about faith and the seeds, the mustard seeds. This is from an actual lesson that Josh taught and shared with his family. And Janine, Josh's mother, kept those seeds, that little bag of seeds, and they appear in the movie. And John Skinner talks about finding a little angel statue, and he showed me that angel statue, and we duplicated that for the film. And so every detail that we could, we put into the movie, and I think it's stronger for it.
I was noticing the cast in this movie. I mean, obviously you've got the part of Josh Dennis played by an up-and-coming actor. What's his name?
So Michael Bradford he plays Josh Dennis, and just does a phenomenal job, and it's fun to see people react to Michael's performance.
But then you've also got some familiar faces, especially if you're, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and have seen some of your other work or other Latter-day Saint-based films. Kirby Hayborn plays Josh's dad.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And Jason Wade, who you'll recognize, Kirby, who you recognize from everything from, Saints and Soldiers to Singles Ward and RM, and Jason Wade from 17 Miracles and Out of Liberty plays in there. Ben Lomu is a familiar face to us all. In fact, Chris Skinner is played by Ivy Mitchell, who, back in the 80s, this is an 80s story, and so Ivy Mitchell stars in a movie called Rigoletto, which is a very popular, fun family film. And
yes.
now to have her come on set and be a part of this was such a neat experience. And
Oh.
then we surrounded this incredible supporting cast with two very familiar actors from faith-based movies. John Michael Finley is our lead, and he plays in I Can Only Imagine, which is a very powerful and well-received faith-based film about that popular song, I Can Only Imagine. And then Cameron Arnett plays our sheriff. And Cameron Arnett, right now, his film is in the top 10 of the country. He's in The Forge, and which is a movie that's doing very well from the Kendrick brothers. And so not only do we have some fun, familiar LDS faces, but some very established nationwide, familiar actors.
Yes, yeah, oh, for sure. I want to circle back and talk about some more Faith of Angels here in a second, but I wanted to kind of go back. You got your start, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. I wanted to know what got you interested in filmmaking and how you got started in that.
Yeah, you're being kind. So I went to film school back in back in the 90s, and as my son says, the 20th century, the 1900s.
Right.
Uh, and have always wanted to make films and always been very, very interested in films, and have been drawn to this faith-based film space. I worked out in LA for several years and absolutely loved it out there. My home base right now is in Utah, and we're here to raise our family. But yeah, I've always wanted to make films, and in 2009, I did my first film, kind of a family comedy called Scout Camp, and I consider that my master's degree as far as learning everything from writing to distribution. And then my next film was a theatrical film called Saratov Approach, which went nationwide, and I've been doing it ever since.
And I understand it's like the 10th anniversary of that film. I think is it safe to say that's your probably most well-known film that you've done?
I think that's my most recognized. Yes, yeah, that's very safe to say. Uh, yeah, we did that in 2013, so here we are now, just a decade later. I've done, this will be my eighth feature film. I think my sixth that will be released in theaters. So I try not to take for granted the wonderful opportunity it is to make film. I know how hard people work to try to make films, and so I'm grateful that I get to do it as a career.
What have you taken away as director of this project? And are there themes that you hope others take away from this?
Yeah. I think that certainly I want people to be entertained. And I mean, that is the goal. If I'm asking them to go to a movie theater and instead of choosing movie A, choose Faith of Angels, I need to make sure that it has the entertainment value that movie A would offer as well. And so that's my goal, and I hope that they take that away. And I'm incredibly entertained and inspired by the story. If they do want something more than just pure entertainment, I hope they take away this connection with that there are miracles happening. There's a theme throughout the movie about kind of connecting the dots, and lots of events can happen, and some people see those events as occurrences, just random occurrences, and others are able to draw the connections and see, a higher power conducting those things and those occurrences and connecting those. And I know that in researching the story and writing it and then directing it and now showing it to people, I'm seeing that both in the story and in the process of doing that. So it's been very impactful and life-changing for me.
I would be remiss if we didn't at least bring this up, because you got another film coming out in November that's already, there's a trailer out and everything. It's called The Carpenter. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, this is a fun movie. We filmed it before Faith of Angels, and our executive producers have decided to release it in theaters, which I'm very excited for. And this is a movie, it's like The Chosen meets Rocky. So it is set in Nazareth, and it's a fun fight movie, kind of this historical fiction, but essentially a prize fighter, MMA style fighter, becomes an apprentice to a mysterious carpenter in Nazareth, and his life changes as a result of it. And so it's unlike anything that I've ever done, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Faith of Angels premieres in Utah this Friday, September 12th, or excuse me, Thursday.
Yeah, September 12th, Thursday, the kind of those early screenings, 6 p.m., and then opens across Utah on Friday, September 13th, and then across the country on September 26th.